Earth had never known a threat like this. For decades, humanity had looked to the stars with a sense of wonder, dreaming of making contact with extraterrestrial life. But when the aliens came, they brought only destruction. It began on a clear Tuesday morning. The skies over major cities worldwide darkened as massive alien ships suddenly appeared, breaking through the atmosphere with deafening roars. Panic spread instantly, and all attempts at communication with the alien fleet were met with silence. The invaders, later identified as the Drak'har, wasted no time in demonstrating their intent. Beams of green energy shot down from the hovering ships, obliterating skyscrapers, leveling city blocks, and reducing bustling metropolises to rubble within minutes. In the chaos of Washington, D.C., Major Alex Carter watched the horror unfold from the command center of the Earth Defense Force, EDF. His eyes were glued to the live feed showing the destruction of New York City, where his sister lived. The screen flickered as the camera operator desperately tried to capture the onslaught. "Get me an open line to the UN command," Carter barked. Around him, the room buzzed with frantic activity. Technicians shouted over one another, struggling to keep up with incoming reports of attacks from every continent. Meanwhile, Dr. Elena Park was in her lab at the World Research Institute in Geneva, her mind racing with questions. As an expert in xenobiology, she had long theorized about first contact with alien life, but she had never imagined it would happen like this. As news of the attacks reached her, she knew humanity was facing an enemy they didn't understand. She needed to find answers fast. Suddenly, the power flickered, and the command center was plunged into darkness. Emergency lights cast an eerie red glow, and for a moment, there was a heavy silence, broken only by the sounds of labored breathing and distant explosions. The backup generators kicked in, and the room sprang back to life. Carter quickly regained his composure. "Get those defenses online now," he ordered. "We need to hit them with everything we've got." But the EDF was vastly outmatched. Conventional weapons barely scratched the alien ships. Advanced jets were swatted from the sky like flies. Ground forces were overwhelmed by Drak'har soldiers, towering creatures clad in impenetrable armor, wielding weapons that turned human bodies to ash. Despite the overwhelming odds, Major Carter wasn't ready to give up. "We have to fight back," he urged his team. "We can't let them wipe us out without a fight." With a renewed sense of purpose, Carter ordered his forces to prepare a counterattack in New York City, hoping to strike a blow against the invaders and buy time for the world to organize a defense. As the first wave of EDF soldiers clashed with the Drak'har on the ruined streets of New York, they quickly realized how outmatched they were. Alien plasma weapons tore through human armor effortlessly. But humanity was tenacious. Using every ounce of ingenuity, soldiers rigged explosives, utilized guerrilla tactics, and engaged in hand-to-hand combat when necessary. Amid the chaos, a squad led by Carter managed to corner a small group of Drak'har. With a mix of sheer luck and ferocity, they took down their first alien soldiers. As the dust settled, Carter stood over the bodies of the fallen aliens, breathing heavily. They had won a small victory, a spark of hope in an otherwise bleak situation. For the first time since the invasion began, it felt like they had a chance. Humanity would not go quietly into the night. Dr. Elena Park barely slept in the days following the initial invasion. The sounds of distant explosions and alarms filled the underground research lab, where she and a small team of scientists worked around the clock. Desperation and determination drove them forward. Humanity's survival depended on finding a way to fight back against the Drak'har. She leaned over the dissected body of a Drak'har soldier, her gloved hands carefully examining its anatomy. The alien's tough, scaly hide and thick muscles had made it nearly impervious to conventional weapons. But there had to be some weakness they could exploit. "Look here," she said, pointing to a cluster of nerve bundles near the base of the creature's skull. "If we could disrupt their nervous system, we might have a chance." Her colleague Dr. Ishan Patel nodded. "We could try to find a frequency that resonates with their nervous tissue," he suggested. "If we can amplify it, we might be able to incapacitate them without having to penetrate their armor." For hours, the team ran tests, their exhaustion forgotten in the rush of discovery. Finally, they found it, a specific frequency of sound that caused a violent reaction in the Drak'har's nervous system. It was their first breakthrough. "This is it," Elena said, her voice filled with a mixture of excitement and disbelief. "We've got something that might work." Meanwhile, in the EDF command center, Major Alex Carter was briefing his soldiers for another mission. The previous skirmishes had taught them a painful lesson. Brute force wasn't enough to defeat the Drak'har. They needed something more. When the call from Dr. Park came through, Carter listened intently. "We think we've found a way to disrupt the aliens," she explained, her voice steady despite the tension. "We're sending over the plans for a prototype weapon now." Within hours, engineers and technicians were working furiously to build the first sonic weapons. The devices were crude, hastily assembled and untested, but they were humanity's best hope. As Carter prepared his unit for deployment, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. "This is it, people," he said, addressing his soldiers. "We've been handed a weapon that could turn the tide. Let's make it count." The EDF's counterattack was swift and coordinated. Carter's team led the charge in a ruined sector of London, now a battleground. As they moved through the devastated streets, the soldiers set up the sonic devices at strategic points, their fingers crossed that the experimental weapons would work. The Drak'har forces appeared, moving with their usual brutal efficiency. Carter gave the signal. The sonic weapons activated, emitting a low hum that quickly built into a piercing shriek. The effect was immediate. Drak'har soldiers staggered, their movements disjointed. Some fell to the ground, clutching their heads, while others convulsed uncontrollably. "It's working!" shouted one of Carter's men. The soldiers quickly moved in, using the chaos to their advantage. For the first time, they weren't just surviving, they were winning. Across the globe, similar scenes played out. From the war-torn streets of Tokyo to the smoldering ruins of Berlin, humans used the sonic weapons to push back the Drak'har. The alien forces, unprepared for the sudden shift in tactics, began to falter. Their once unyielding advance was turned into a hasty retreat. In the aftermath of the battle, Carter stood amid the wreckage, watching as EDF soldiers cheered and embraced one another. The sonic weapons had given them a much-needed victory. But he knew the war was far from over. The Drak'har had underestimated humanity once, and they wouldn't make that mistake again. Dr. Park's voice crackled over the radio. "Major Carter, this is only the beginning. We need to keep the pressure on. I'll keep working on more advanced versions of the weapon." "Understood," Carter replied, determination in his voice. "We'll take the fight to them. They attacked our home, and now it's our turn." The victory in London was short-lived. Barely a week after the success of the sonic weapons, the Drak'har launched a new, more insidious attack. Reports began flooding in from all over the world. A mysterious sickness was spreading rapidly through the human population. People who had been exposed to the recent battles were falling ill with a violent, fast-acting virus that left doctors baffled and hospitals overwhelmed. Dr. Elena Park watched the news reports with a sinking feeling in her stomach. The Drak'har were not just warriors, they were cunning tacticians. This biological weapon was a calculated move to finish what they had started. In the underground lab in Geneva, she gathered her team of scientists. "We don't have much time," she said, her voice urgent. "The virus is spreading too quickly. We need to understand it and find a way to stop it." While her team worked tirelessly around the clock, Major Alex Carter prepared for a new mission. The intelligence reports were clear. The Drak'har had a facility deep in the mountains of Eastern Europe, where they were manufacturing and distributing the virus. Carter's task was simple but dangerous: destroy the facility and halt the production of the biological weapon. Carter assembled his best men, a mix of seasoned veterans and eager new recruits. The tension was palpable as they loaded up into their transport. They all knew the risks. This wasn't just another battle. This was humanity's last hope. "Listen up," Carter said, his voice steady. "We get in, we destroy the facility, and we get out. No heroics, no mistakes. Our survival depends on this." The journey to the Drak'har facility was grueling, the terrain unforgiving. The transport dropped them several miles from their target to avoid detection. They moved quickly and quietly through the dense forest, their eyes scanning for any signs of the enemy. When they finally reached the outskirts of the facility, They were met with a sight that chilled them to the bone. The building was heavily fortified, and Drak'har guards patrolled the perimeter with cold precision. Carter signaled his team to spread out and take positions. The plan was to infiltrate the facility under the cover of darkness, plant explosives in key locations, and get out before anyone noticed. But as they moved in, things quickly went wrong. A sudden noise, a twig snapping underfoot, alerted the guards, and all hell broke loose. Gunfire erupted, lighting up the night. Carter's team returned fire, but the Drak'har were relentless. Bodies fell, both human and alien, as chaos engulfed the compound. Amid the confusion, Carter spotted the entrance to the facility's main lab. "Follow me," he shouted, leading a small group through the heavy steel doors. Inside, the team encountered a grisly scene: rows of tanks containing the deadly virus, guarded by more Drak'har soldiers. Carter didn't hesitate. "Set the charges," he ordered. As his team worked, he fought off the remaining guards, his determination unwavering despite the odds stacked against them. Explosions rocked the facility, one after another. The walls began to crumble, and alarms blared. "Fall back," Carter yelled. As the team sprinted towards the exit, a piece of debris fell, pinning one of the soldiers. Carter hesitated, torn between saving his man and completing the mission. Then, with a surge of strength, he freed the soldier and dragged him to safety. Outside, the team regrouped, battered but alive. The facility burned behind them, the smoke rising into the night sky like a dark omen. They had succeeded, but at a high cost. Carter glanced around at his surviving team members, their faces streaked with dirt and blood. "We did it," he said quietly. "But this isn't over." Back in Geneva, Dr. Park received the news of the facility's destruction with a mix of relief and urgency. Her team had finally isolated the virus's genetic code and developed a prototype vaccine. "We have a chance now," she said, injecting a dose into her arm to demonstrate its efficacy. "We just need to buy more time." The vaccine worked. Within days, distribution began, and the spread of the virus slowed. Humanity had narrowly avoided extinction. But as Carter and Park both knew, the fight was far from over. The Drak'har had shown just how far they were willing to go to wipe out humanity. Now it was time for Earth to show what it was capable of. With the Drak'har biological weapon neutralized and the virus under control, Earth's forces were ready to launch a decisive counterattack. The EDF had gathered every remaining ship, soldier, and resource for one final push, an all-out assault on the Drak'har mothership that hovered ominously above Earth's atmosphere. This was the heart of the invasion, and destroying it would cripple the enemy for good. Major Alex Carter stood on the deck of the EDF flagship, the Resolute staring at the screen displaying the massive alien vessel. It loomed like a dark moon, an imposing reminder of all the destruction the Drak'har had wrought. His team was ready, their faces steely, with determination. "This is it," Carter said, his voice echoing through the comms. "We take down that ship, and we end this war." On board the mothership, Supreme Commander Zalcor watched the human fleet approach. The Drak'har had underestimated these humans, and it had cost them dearly. But Zalcor was not ready to concede. He barked orders to his subordinates, preparing the ship's defenses for the coming battle. As the Resolute and the fleet engaged the mothership, Earth's forces unleashed everything they had. Missiles streaked through the void, and energy weapons fired in a dazzling display of light. The Drak'har responded with equal ferocity, their own weapons tearing through human ships with devastating power. But the humans pressed on, determined to reach their target. Carter led a small team of elite soldiers in a daring boarding operation, using a captured Drak'har shuttle to breach the mothership's hull. As they fought their way through the ship's interior, the corridors shook with each impact from the battle raging outside. The halls were filled with the sounds of battle, shouts, gunfire, and the alien war cries of the Drak'har. Reaching the command center, Carter and his team were confronted by Zalcor and his elite guard. The alien commander towered over them, his eyes burning with hatred. "You will not defeat us," Zalcor snarled, raising his weapon. The ensuing battle was fierce and chaotic, but Carter's team fought with the desperation of those who had nothing left to lose. One by one, the Drak'har guards fell. Finally, Carter faced Zalcor in a brutal hand-to-hand fight. Despite the alien's superior strength, Carter's sheer tenacity and quick thinking allowed him to gain the upper hand. With a final, powerful strike, he brought Zalcor down. The command center erupted in alarms as the mothership began to lose control. "We've done it!" Carter shouted into his comm. "The ship is going down. Everyone, evacuate now." As the humans fled, the Drak'har mothership started to break apart, pieces of it burning up as they fell through the atmosphere. The alien fleet, now leaderless and disorganized, began to retreat. Earth's forces had won. Back on the Resolute, Carter watched as the last remnants of the Drak'har invasion fled into space. "We did it," he said quietly, exhaustion and relief washing over him. Earth was battered, but unbroken. Humanity had faced annihilation and emerged victorious. Now it was time to rebuild and prepare for whatever might come next.